Optimal performance occurs when teams and individuals simply do the best they can with the time that they have and the resources at their disposal. Those teams who dig in drudgery, work out problems and issues, celebrate the highs and the flow moments, dig in again in drudgery and keep on keeping on to the end game, the mission or the flag on the hill. The checked out leader is the most dangerous one of all. So we cannot afford to be absent, at least be more assertive or supportive, because we can easily dial up the other side of the fence.
The People Performance Podcast is made up of 3 series. First up, we have the Leader Lounge episodes with founder of T2, Martin Johnson. Then we have the guest interview episodes. And finally, we have our performance episodes delivered by our very own T2 consultants. For now, sit back, tune in and enjoy the People Performance Podcast.
So welcome back to the People Performance Podcast and another Leader Lounge episode with me, the founder and CEO of T2. This episode, we're going to be talking about optimal performance and optimal leadership. Those words are really important to understand, specifically the word optimal. We talk about it a lot here at T2 in all the work that we do. And we believe that it represents the most accurate and real performance model that all teams and organizations face. So let's start by defining optimal performance in order to go into what we mean by optimal leadership. So there's 3 main theories when it comes to performance modeling in any performance organization, whether that's a corporation, a public sector organization, whether it's the military, a sports team, whatever it might be. That is peak, high, and optimal performance. So it might be worth just defining the difference between the 3 really quickly. Peak performance occurs when a team or individual meticulously plan to perform to their peak potential at a certain point in time in the future. So if you think about it, if I know I need to perform on the 24th of July at 12:30 for a big event or a big situation, I can plan and prepare to peak at that point in time. In order to do so, I'm going to need high predictability. I'm going to need a controlled environment. I'm going to need all the resources that I require at my disposal. I'm going to need no distractions and low levels of uncertainty in the environment. Now, that's great if you're an Olympian preparing for an event in 4 years' time and you've got all the resources, money and at your disposal. But it's not great if you are in an organization or in a team which is highly unpredictable and having to respond and react in the moment. So when people talk about peak performance, we often say it's unrealistic, and we should really dismiss that because there's only certain controlled environments and situations where it actually works and can occur. So what's optimal performance? Well, optimal performance is what we embrace here at T2, and it's a reflection of most organizations and teams. Optimal performance occurs when teams and individuals simply do the best they can with the time that they have and the resources at their disposal. They perform optimally in the moment based on the situation. And I love that because it is a true reflection of life. It's a true reflection of many organizations and teams. You can only do sometimes what you can do in the moment with the things you control, given the time that you have and the resources at your disposal. It's optimal, meaning it might not feel peak and high in that moment in time, but it also might just be the best you can do to move or advance your position forwards. And we have this graph which says in optimal performance, sometimes that can feel like flow. Flow is absolutely, we're delivering to a high standard in a timely fashion and it feels great. And sometimes it feels like drudgery. Drudgery is a great word and we use it a lot here at T2. It feels hard. It feels like we're papering over the cracks. It feels like we're merely trying to just keep our head above the water. But that's so accurate in modern day organizations and team dynamics. So we embrace optimal performance here at T2. I'll just quickly mention high performance before we come on to the leadership piece. So high performance is the byproduct of continuous optimal performance. So what I mean by that is if a team or individual forms a habit of digging in drudgery and embracing the flow moments and the highs and celebrating and recognizing them, and you keep focused on the flag on the hill on what you're trying to achieve, then you will eventually reach a high performance outcome. And therefore, high performance is the byproduct of continuous optimal performance. Those teams who dig in drudgery, work out problems and issues, celebrate the highs and the flow moments, dig in again in drudgery, and keep on keeping on to the end game, the mission, or the flag on the hill. So if we buy into the notion that optimal performance is what we control on a daily basis in the here and now, then when we work with leaders, we have to start looking at, well, what is optimal leadership? What is the best way to demonstrate leadership in both flow and drudgery? Well, we break this up into two areas. If we bucket all the leadership styles and qualities up into two sides, you can say there is a supportive element of leadership and there is an assertive element of leadership. So the supportive qualities of leadership are things like caring, compassion, empathy, protection of the teams. It's where you're saying to people, look, I've got your back. We're in this together. I'm going to support you. I'm going to be there when you need it. We're going to work through problems and issues, and just know that you can trust me. That's a really important set of qualities for leaders to have, certainly in the modern day era more than ever. But what we seem to have left behind a little bit, or what we seem to have disregarded as old school leadership and not fit for purpose, is assertive qualities when it comes to leadership. And what I mean by assertive qualities is things like, when we drive accountability and expectation within our teams, when we are unapologetic about standards and expectations, and when we're trying to drive the results that the organization and the team needs. And they're the more, if you like, assertive style of leadership qualities. So the big question is in order to apply optimal leadership, to embrace optimal performance, which is all you can do in many organizations, what's the best way to go about that? Should we be more supportive and then assertive when we need to be? Should we be more assertive and supportive when we need to be? Well, the answer is we need to get really good at two things. Number one, we need to recognize what we are in our default style and position. If you understand more about your personality naturally and how you're wired and what your profiling says about you, you will almost be able to see which of the leadership buckets you sit in a little bit more naturally than the other one. So for example, myself personally, I'm probably more natural on the assertive style of leadership. I've got no problem driving results, holding people to account, being very clear in my communication, and understanding that the standards to be met in the environment. And so what I've got to do is I've got to embrace that and make sure that that works for me and the team. But I've also got to make sure I balance that and dial up my supportive elements and make sure that I'm considerate in my delivery, that I'm empathetic and compassionate at times, and that I'm signaling trust and safety along the way. For you listening to this, it might be the opposite. You might be more supportive and you've got to dial up some of those assertive leadership qualities. But we've got to be able to straddle the two, balance the two to perform optimally. We've got to know that in times of drudgery, maybe we need to dial up some assertive qualities. Maybe we don't. Maybe actually people are delicate and we're feeling a little bit uncertain and we need to show more of the supportive side. It's very situational. But you need to be able to balance the two. Great leaders are those people who signal to people, when I walk in a room or when I'm in the environment, I expect you to deliver. I expect us to be here to do the job that we're here to do. However, I've got you back. I'm in this with you, and we're all going to go forward together. And if we make mistakes, it's fine. We'll rally round, we'll figure it out, and we'll go again. What that ends up creating in an environment is high challenge, high support. I'm going to say that again because if there's one thing you take from this short Leader Lounge episode, I want it to be this. Your role as a leader, if you're going to perform optimally and apply optimal leadership, is to create a high challenge, high support environment. And that's where the balance of assertive and supportive comes in. It allows teams to navigate the fluctuating nature of flow and drudgery. It allows them to say, right, we've got a job to do and we've got to stay on task and there's an expectation to deliver. But I'm going to do so in a challenged state and free, because I know that my leader is behind me. And if we do take a dip or we do have a tough moment, we're in this together and we're going to work it out and move forward. That is known as optimal leadership. So what happens if we get this balance wrong? too assertive. Let's say we don't get this balance right and the pressure gets to us because we're all human. We talk a lot here at T2 about the chimp brain, and the chimp comes out and we feel in survival mode and we're in our shadow state and we're not the best version of ourselves. And we start overcompensating and start going too assertive in our leadership style. Well, if you do this, you will drive results temporarily as a leader who goes assertive. Assertiveness does make people switch on. It does send that message that we have to up our game and we better deliver. But if you do that, you'll likely drive temporary results. But you may, if that is over a sustained period of time and as a habit, you may lose your people. So think about this. If you're listening to this short episode, this podcast, and you think, I resonate with Martin and I'm more of an assertive leader naturally, and you think that's a good thing, it may be in small doses and temporarily in pockets, but if that becomes habitual, you will drive results, but you will eventually lose your people. And that is not optimal leadership. So what happens if you're too supportive? And we all know those leaders, and you might be out there yourself thinking, that sounds like me. I'm a little bit too nice at times. I don't like conflict. I like to keep everybody together, keep the spirits high. Well, if you're an overly supportive leader, you will engage your people, right? And you will maintain harmony in the team. But eventually, you will lose results. In the absence of expectation, in the absence of assertiveness, results will decline. We saw this in COVID. Teams and organizations almost overnight went from assertive leadership styles into overly supportive. Everybody can work from home, walk your dog, take as many breaks as you can, and the empowerment given and the support given and the compassion given for employees was sky high, and it was great to see. What happened then when the world returned to normal is all of a sudden organizations were coming off the furlough program, the government funded program. It was time to get back to work. It was time to start driving results. And guess what? People didn't want to come back to work. People felt quite happy in this remote, flexible, agile way of working. And so organizations struggle to assert that assertive side of leadership again and drive the accountability and results. I think only a few years on, we're seeing that balance in many organizations start to come back. But overly supportive will mean that, yes, you will keep harmony, you'll probably be liked, and absolutely you will engage your people, but you are likely at some point to sacrifice and lose some urgency, accountability, and results. And what if you're neither? What happens to those leaders where they're neither overly supportive or they're not overly assertive? Well, they're likely to be absent leaders. And we have a really good grid on this in our material here at T2 where we show the assertive side, the supportive side. And then right in the bottom left-hand corner of the quadrant, there's the absent leader, which says, I'm neither showing any, I'm distant, I'm absent from the situation. And I always say a quote whenever I'm working with people: the checked out leader is the most dangerous one of all. So we cannot afford to be absent. At least be more assertive or supportive, because we can easily dial up the other side of the fence. And so, in order to wrap up this Leader Lounge episode, what is the main message I'm sort of trying to get across here? Organizations have to embrace optimal performance, because remember, peak is unrealistic and high performance is the byproduct of continuous optimal performance. In most teams and organizations that I have ever worked with, the reality of their world means there's lots of uncertainty. They don't have all the resources at their disposal that they require. They have to overcome drudgery, challenges, and adversity. There's lots of people and complex relationships and issues at play. And therefore, peak performance is not a reflection of what people's world really looks like. And if we are absolutely buying into that high performance is the outcome, it's the byproduct of continuous optimal, then optimal performance is all we can do, which means we've got to embrace the flow moments and the highs and drive a recognition culture around it. But we've got to get really good in drudgery. And in order to do that, we need to embrace this concept of optimal leadership, which says, understand who you are in your default style. Are you more of an assertive leader or a supportive, humanistic leader? There's no good or bad with that. It's absolutely fine which one you are. And then it's about embracing and leveraging the good qualities that come with that assertiveness or supportiveness, but learning to dial up the other side in equal balance in the right moments to drive the right outcomes. And if you do that, you will create a culture in your teams and your organizations which is high challenge. You're here to do a job. You're going to be stretched. We're going to learn. We're going to develop. We're going to test ourselves. We're going to push. But it's also high support. I'm right behind you. We're all in it together. And we're going to make sure that we learn all of the time, find solutions, and keep pushing forward. And that is the sweet spot of performance. That's all for this Leader Lounge episode. Hopefully there's some stuff in there that you can take away. If you want to put anything in the comments or ask any questions about it, please do comment on the social media platforms. And maybe then we can feed that into future episodes and we can talk about some of the stuff and flesh this out a bit more. But other than that, that's all for this Leader Lounge episode, and we'll be back again shortly with another People Performance podcast.
The People Performance Podcast, brought to you by T2.